committee and board chair knowledge sharing panel. So my name is Donovan. I've been to the institution for, well, it was 10 years in September. And during that time, I've worked quite closely with the volunteer network and met and know people to various degrees who we've got on the panel here today. And some of them I've seen in action as chairs as well, which is why they are here today. And others I've heard very, very good things about, which is always good to know. So no pressure to our panel. You all come very well recommended. And what we'll be doing is chatting about that experience, and I'll be asking some questions to get the conversation started, and then relying upon you, joining us online. If you want to put your questions in the chat, feel free, and we can pose those to the panel and get them chatting around that, and hopefully gain something from the experience. And certainly as somebody who has had to chair the odd committee here and there myself outside of the IMechE, yeah, there are some challenges there, and certainly I'm hoping to learn something today. So enough about me. I'm going to hand over to the panel and ask them to do a little bit of introduction about themselves. They might want to throw in something interesting, but I don't think they'll beat Penny today. So on that note, I'm going to start with Penny Taylor, who I first met, gosh, almost 10 years ago, when she was then also with the Professional Review Committee. And of course, we've worked together on various projects and committees over the years. But over to you, Penny.
Thank you, Donovan. So I've been a member of the institution since I was at school, which is quite a long time ago now. And I've had, this is my second stint as chair of the Professional Review Committee. So I was the chair back in the 2000s, and then I left the committee because I was posted to China for business. So my background is automotive. And then when I came back from China, I started again getting involved with the Professional Review Committee as a member, and again have progressively worked my way back up to being chair. But I'm about to stand down again come November, as I'm now part of the Qualifications and Membership Board, and I'm vice chair there. So there is a limit to how much time and effort one can put into these volunteering roles. And one of the key things that I would like to say about becoming a chair is just how much the work ramps up from being the member of a committee, that suddenly you get involved in all sorts of things that you never knew happened. Disputes, issues of bad behaviour, inappropriate practice, representing your committee on other committees and things of that nature. So there really is a step change in the workload from going from being a member of a committee to becoming the chair or the vice chair of the committee. So my committee, the Professional Review Committee, is responsible for all the membership applications that go through the institution. And we currently have 50 people on the committee. So 25 who are actually full committee members and 25 who are panel members who do all their work virtually. And because the committee is so large, we have a structure of vice presidents. I have 5 vice chairs. And the system that we operate is that I am the chair of the committee, but my vice chairs take it in turns to rotate chairing the meetings. So that gives me an opportunity to give my chair's report and to set strategy and direction, rather than think about the tactical day-to-day things that are happening as the meeting is running, particularly with hybrid meetings where you need somebody in the room to chair the meeting and also somebody paying attention to the camera and the chat and so on to make sure that the people who are online don't get forgotten. So a strange range of experiences. Or as I say, I chair a committee, but often, very rarely, chair the meetings. And again, there's a lot of work that goes on outside of committee. So I'll shut up now and pass on back to Donovan.
Thank you very much for that, Penny. Also forgetting to mention that you chaired the CPD Assessment Committee and are a past chair of the Automobile Committee as well. So if you're at HQ, I think I was sitting in the council room one day, perhaps sort of dozing off and having to see your name on one of the boards on the wall. So yeah,
scary stuff. Yeah,
indeed. Thank you, Penny. So I'm going to jump over then to Chua, who of course is joining us, part of our international community, and currently chair of the Southeast Asia region, but of course has also been a part of the International Young Members Board and quite active in that area as well. So over to you, Chua.
Right, okay, so thank you, Donovan. So can you all hear me clearly? All right, good, great. So just a quick introduction about myself. So I started volunteering for IMechE as the academic liaison officers for the student chapters in my universities, and then I moved on to become one of the committee members in the Malaysia branch. And in 2019, I was elected as the Southeast Asia region young member rep. And then I was elected as the vice chair for the International Young Members Committee. Okay, so my term ended when I took up the, I would call that well, I was elected as the Southeast Asia region chair in the mid of this year. So during my term when I was the region young members representative, I came up with quite a lot of initiative for my particular region in the Southeast Asia when it was locked down throughout the whole wide world basically because of the COVID-19. So I did quite a number of initiatives to help the young members and chair. Okay, I set up a few, like for example, the Southeast Asia Young Member Task Force that actually consists of young members from the countries like from Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia. These 4 countries, the young members there, and we have meeting like what we have right now here, and we organize online activities. Okay, and we really actually did a lot of cross-border activities that involves young members from different countries. And this is one of the initiatives that actually has been carried on, even though I'm now no longer the young members representative in that particular region. It has been carried on, and hopefully it will actually benefit more members in the future. Right, okay, that's all.
Perfect, thank you, Chua. So I'm now going to hand on to Amit, who is the vice chair of the Derby and Nottingham Young Members Panel. And as I say, I'm very active in the region, and again, came across my desk as a rising star in the, which is very apt since somebody commented that you've got a star above your head in the camera right now. So yeah, over to you to do an introduction for us, Amit, please.
So
and any
hi,
insights.
I'm Amit. I'm a 4th year degree apprentice at Rolls-Royce. So I joined IMechE in my 2nd year as an outreach lead, then to be elected as vice chair. I was provisionally elected to be chair, but then I thought I would gain a little bit more experience from people that have been on the panel longer than me, so I'll take vice chair, and grow my knowledge from there. So as you said, Donovan, we are a very active panel, and we are spreading and growing. But yes, that's a short summary of me. You're on mute, Donovan.
Oh, of course, somebody had to do it. So I took that bullet. Thank you, Amit. And we'll definitely come back to some of those points as well and explore them a little bit more. And then last but not least, we have Christian Young, who, when I met him years ago, was chair of the Young Members Board. I very clearly remember meeting Christian. I have no idea what I spoke to the board about that day. I came in to do an update, but Christian made an impression, be it good or bad. I'll let him decide. So over to you, Christian.
Hi, Donovan. And I very much remember that meeting because I think I commented on your wonderful purple socks. So there you go. You made an impression as well. So yes, Christian Young, formerly chair of Young Members Board, currently vice chair of the Education and Skills Strategy Board. And I'm also, until recently, I left the board in July, but I was deputy chair of Support Network. So that's a trustee board for Support Network as well. So been involved in chairing boards for a while, and I actually now quite frequently chair boards as part of my day job, or actually act as board secretary as well. And some things I was going to bring up, and something I do when I promote sort of volunteering to younger members, I often say, that the reason I've got my job now is the experiences I gained through volunteering as a board chair. And actually, having been a board chair, I think that actually makes me a better board secretary in my day job as well. So you can definitely benefit as a board chair as well from the experiences you gain. Yeah.
Perfect. No, thank you. So quite a lot of experience around the table, which is really good. And something I wanted to come back to, as Penny alluded to at the very beginning, was the amount of work that happens as soon as you become a chair. Compared to any other role. And I think the most obvious one, I think the amount of meetings you have to attend automatically doubles. I think because many of the way that it's structured, of course, Penny sits on the QMB through being chair of PRC. Chua, of course, you're on the International Strategy Board as well, and still, you help out with the young member panel. And I think, Christian, when you were chair of the YMB, you also had a role with the trustee board as well.
Yeah, council, and attended trustee board quite frequently.
Indeed. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of the extra sort of work and responsibilities. So I think my first question is, what's your advice for sort of trying to navigate through all of that? If you were talking to your younger self as a chair, or somebody who's kind of, sitting in the position of vice chair, or thinking, oh, that looks interesting. Because as we saw, IMechE took one look and said, actually, no, thank you just yet. Which I think is a really, really good quality in a volunteer, is recognizing, what your own time limitations are, all your experience, and go, actually, I'm not going to overcommit. So yeah, I think very keen to get what your advice would be. And I think I'll start with Penny again for that one, since you brought it up initially.
Yeah, I guess even with lots of experience, it still surprises me kind of what level of commitment and the kind of things that get asked of me or thrown at me, as it were, as the chair. You become the go-to person for kind of any queries. And that means that if staff have issues where volunteers are not behaving themselves the way they would like, or things like that, you can get involved in some fairly heavy conversations. And so, it's one of those things that kind of hits you sideways. You have to learn from the people who've been in those roles before. But also it's very good career development. It's very good personal development. And it's the kind of stuff that you can then take back into your working life. So it all fits in with the CPD ethos that you're continually learning, whether it be at work, as a volunteer, on a committee. And it's always kind of, I enjoy learning. I'm pushing myself to learn more wherever I go. So I like dealing with new things and taking on new challenges. But there is a very good point of saying, am I in a position where I could actually take that job on, and recognizing that becoming chair is at least twice as much work as it was being a vice chair, and probably 3 or 4 times as much work as it is being a committee member.
So same question then for Chua.
I totally agree with Penny's point of view that it requires more commitment, honestly, more commitment, especially coming from my experience where we are talking about handling the international members, and then when during the lockdown time, where we really have to sit down and spend time to plan, because during the lockdown time, we have no idea what to do, what can we do, and then you really have to sacrifice certain amount of your time to really plan what you want to do for the next year or so, and then see what you can do with it, and with the amount of what you call that the resources that you have. Planning. That's what I learned so much about taking up this position. Planning, project management is something related to that, and then you are dealing with different people from different walks of life, different culture, different nationalities, and the way that they actually operate is different from you. So it's again comes to diversity and inclusions. That is something that I learned throughout this lockdown, and then when I start working with people from outside of my country, and we have to accept their point of view. This is something that, well, you take it and then you learn it and then you move on and you use it. That's something that I really, really learned about during my time there. Yeah.
And I think also as part of that is, while you're sort of, the legs are furiously paddling under the surface, you sort of also outwardly, people look to you for that leadership and they expect you to have those answers. So yeah.
Most of the time I don't have. Most of the time I don't have. We just have to trial and error. That's it.
Indeed. So then moving on to the support around you, and I'll talk to our 2 current vice chairs now, starting with Amit, is what do you think sort of makes a good vice chair, and sort of what are you expecting to sort of get out of that to help you prepare to then, well, I'm assuming you do want to chair in the future if we don't put you off today.
Yes, yeah. So I would say typically a chair, would go to regional meetings and, feed up, ideas, suggestions, how the panel's working. And, as I was an outreach lead, I never saw any of that. So rather than, just being dropped into, a regional meeting, I thought, why don't I become a vice chair and then tag along to, every so often a regional meeting. So I would say it eases you into becoming a vice chair. But then also, from being an outreach lead to being a vice chair, now it's a case of you're checking on each one of your panel members, making sure, they're not, burnt out, in a sense, and that they're happy to commit to certain events and kind of steer them into the direction they want to go. If they're really fond on, helping schools in the local area, we can kind of steer them into, down that road. So I'd say analyzing people's strengths and weaknesses and, seeing what we can work on and, what they'd like to do essentially.
I agree. It's very much a people's game. At the
Yes,
end of the day, we're always dealing with people, and that's quite an interesting one because, again, different chairs have different styles, and I think we've all seen that. And some rely very heavily on their vice chairs. I know Penny does. I think you make very good effect of your vice chairs, and you now have 5 of them, which I think might make some of the others a little bit envious of that. But very much your style will define your committee as well. And how you do that. So I think how to phrase the question is, how do you ensure that you don't put too much of yourself into that process and you don't become the one voice, so to speak, which can sometimes happen, especially you are in a leadership position, you've been put there because of those qualities. How do you sort of strike that balance between moving in the right direction? Of course, we've mentioned words like strategy and all that other stuff that happens outside of the formal meetings. So what's that experience like? And I'm going to dump that on Christian because he's not had a question in a short while.
It's an interesting question. I mean, so I was going to talk about, it links back to the very first question, but I think there's a lot of onus on the chair to actually build that relationship with the vice chair as a way of almost succession planning and as a way to build up your vice chair so that they build those relationships, they can see what it's like from the start. And I don't think it's very good for a chair to come in almost unprepared and fresh to the role. And I think actually that is also relevant to what you've asked about how to make sure that the chair's personality and style doesn't dominate the meetings, is to delegate some of that to your vice chairs. So, for example, the current board, I'm vice chair of education, we have a lot of relationships with external partners. We take a lot of meetings. There's lots of relationships which have to be managed between the board. And I think one thing that's working quite well is that Helen will delegate out either to the staff or to me as the vice chair. And I think that's a really good opportunity. And I meet with Helen, and if we have had meetings, we keep each other up to date and we talk about what things are happening. And I think you have to have that really good relationship. And I think that also acts to mediate the chair's style coming across too strongly. I mean, every chair, if a chair has a style, they should really be able to use that and shape a board how they want. But yeah, I think the vice chair has an important role to play in mediating that as well.
Okay, so Penny, I'm going to throw that one at you as well, because again, I think you do have a very clear style, and I mean that in a good way.
I take the view that I like to share things around, and I like the succession planning. And for me, it was always one of the things in my professional working life that I wanted to see my team in action, my team, leading a meeting, so that I could give them some feedback, and that if any fine tuning was needed, we could actually have that conversation, rather than them being kind of dumped in it just when I didn't appear. So for me, it's much more about the consensus and the team, rather than it being, if you like, my committee and me doing all the work and making all the decisions. There is a group of us, and we all work together. Each of my vice chairs has a particular area of responsibility, and most of them also chair a working group, so that we've got individual projects going on that they lead on. So again, it's kind of a good way of breaking up the work, breaking up the responsibilities, and letting people know that there are individuals who have the lead on those things, with a view to not everything having to come to me and me being the bottleneck. So if somebody can't get hold of me, there'll be somebody else to make a decision, or it doesn't have to come to me. Oh, there are some things that do have to come to me, but a lot of it doesn't have to come to me. And I think, again, that's important, that vice chairs get their own areas of responsibility as well as their own development and some feedback.
No, indeed, and I think we all have examples where we've seen where a committee falls apart when a chair leaves.
Yeah,
and becomes dormant, which is
where you've got a committee where the chair perhaps has a very strong personality and perhaps more of a dictatorial style, so that the committee feels that they're not being used in quite the same way or can't contribute in the same way. I see that as an issue. So to me, it is leadership and consensus of the committee rather than it being my direction and everybody has to follow, if you see what I mean.
And quite a lot of sort of preparation and work goes into that, which I think you've all touched on as well. And what IMechE was talking about, the people relationship development, to ensure that you've got that pipeline. Because of course, with the professional review committee, which is quite large in terms of most IMechE committees, and you have a pipeline through the interviewer community and the other assessors. But of course, in the regions, it's not quite as sort of structured as that. What are your sort of challenges when it comes to succession planning, not just for the chair and vice chair, but actually the health of your committee as a whole? And I'm going to come to Amit first for that one, and then probably Chua afterwards. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, do you mind repeating what you said? Sorry.
No, of course. So just looking at some of the challenges that you have with succession planning, not just for the chair and vice chair, but actually the committee itself. So you've got that pipeline of incoming, talent, really, people who can contribute, be part of the committee, part of that sort of structure, and hopefully follow the path. And I think everyone here has sort of started somewhere and then sort of worked your way back up as well. So how do you ensure that pipeline remains open and healthy?
So in terms of getting people onto the panel itself, before our committee was very closed off. So as soon as I joined, I bridged a gap between apprentices and getting involved within an IMechE panel. So we've had a new flood of apprentices wanting to join, and they start off as volunteering as events, and the ones who want to stick around longer and have great ideas to contribute, we will then suggest, would you like to be an outreach lead? Would you like to take on a permanent role? So that's one thing which keeps them enticed, because not only is it good for us that we can give back to the community, but also for their professional development themselves. And then again, the point I raised earlier, whoever's very keen to for example reach out to schools, we will kind of make them an outreach lead in education itself, because that's what I'm in the process of doing at the moment, reorganizing our structure as sort. So instead of outreach, we've got community outreach, and then we've got educational outreach. So it gives people to actually have a role that they're proud of and that they could succeed with.
And I think the development aspect is really important, that anybody who volunteers on any of our committees is going to get a huge amount of development out of the experience, and it's great for their network as well.
Yes. Yeah.
No, agreed. I think I've stopped volunteering for a role because I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I think that's a part of it as well. I sort of, you sort of a little bit of dragging your feet, and you're just like, why am I doing this? And then I decided I don't have to. And again, I joined another organization who were, had a completely different ethos, and I quite enjoyed the process. And again, there was that self-development element as well. But I think it's very much reliant, as you said, Amit, about being proactive and going out and reaching out to the apprenticeships, your local engineering communities and groups you have ties with, and going, hi, we'd like to help. And I think that first step of being an outreach lead is a little taster, and it's less commitment, and then you sort of see who's got the mettle to do and get on board a little bit longer. So thank you. So same question to Chua then, because of course you're based internationally, so I think you've also got the tension between IMechE members, but also engineers in the wider community who are, they don't even know what the IMechE is or what it is we do. And I know you are active in a fairly active hub, and we've got probably several thousand members in your region. So how do you keep that succession going?
Okay, so I wanted to share this one in two different categories or two different levels. So I will share the first one that I did. Maybe this one will be useful for Amit. Okay, so this is what I did with my student chapter. Okay, I've handed out my academic liaison officers to my colleague really, who actually took over. She saw the contributions that I did for the student chapter when I took over, and then I actually built up the student chapters. It was a passive dormant student chapters basically, and then I built up the spirit of being a family, the so-called family among the members there. So when we have activities, after the activities, we will have sessions like review sessions. We will have probably tea or coffee, and then we have chit chat. So over the years, this practice has been there, and then they actually have built up the kind of a family spirit, even though they are not related. Okay, but then they have a kind of, hey, my friend is helping, asking me to do this thing for him and or for her, and then they are willing to chip in anytime, just because they are family. This is how we treat our family. So I built up that kind of spirit, a family spirit among the student chapters, the affiliate members itself already. And I've seen it itself that is very, very useful. Even after they graduated, they still keep in contact, and then they still actually encourage each other. This is one thing that I treat, and then they actually, some of them have become committee members in, let's say, my Malaysia, current Malaysia Young Members Chair is actually from being a student before, and then now she's the chair for the first female chair for the Malaysian Young Member branch. Okay, so and then this is from affiliate to associate members. And then in terms of the members itself, what I see, I will also use that we want to give the appropriate appreciations for everything that has been contributed by the members itself. Give recognition if they have done something that is really, really good for the society or for the IMechE itself. Even though it's just a simple thank you or just a simple token of appreciation, all these things is really, really going to impact this member. They will think that, okay, oh, whatever that I have done for the IMechE is being appreciated. And they will feel to, how to say, they want to contribute more because they are being appreciated. And that's where I start to have, when I start doing this one, I start to have people coming in. They say that they want to do more. And then when we have the people with the same channel, same frequency, they want to contribute. And this is where I start to have a pool of people and then a pool of volunteers with me who are willing to actually sacrifice their time and come, let's sit down and plan something for the region, for the branch or for the young members in this particular region. And then that's how I actually end up with a group of people. Not a lot, but a group of people, 5 to 10 of them who are willing to spend their weekends to discuss about this. Okay, what can we do for the next year? What can we do for the next month? What can we do for the affiliate members? That's how we did it slowly. And then we had the kind of, what do you call that? Family spirit. You are my brother, you are my sisters, something like that. That's how I did it. Yeah.
Thank you. So anything to add, Christian, before we move on to the next?
Yeah, just listening to what Amit was saying there, I think I often have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about this idea, you know, the idea that the touch on the shoulder gets a really bad rep these days. And I think that's fair if it's driven by kind of nepotism and pulling people in who are your mates to be on the board. You know, that's obviously very negative. But, you know, when I see boards struggling, especially to put people into the chair, vice chair, or for the young members board, for example, that has multiple vice chairs and other executive roles to the trustee board rep, I think the touch on the shoulder can be a really important tool to use if you can see someone who's got the potential either on the board already or to bring someone onto the board. And often my experience has been that these people, it's not necessarily that they don't want to do it, it's that they often don't know if they're qualified. There's a confidence issue. And I think just that little touch on the shoulder, so we think you'd be really good at this post. Have you considered going for it? I think it can be a real reassurance and a really useful tool, I think, to ensuring succession. Like I said, if it's done in the right way. And sometimes I think in an effort to avoid the negative aspects of the tap on the shoulder, some people can be very keen and keen to do everything by, I don't know what you'd call it, a democratic process, open applications, advertise it and see who we get. But my experience in a volunteer organisation like the IMechE is that can work occasionally, and that's how I joined the YMB. But quite often it doesn't yield the right results, or and I'll give you a negative experience from YMB, is we used to get a lot of instances of what we would call CV surfers, who were people who wanted the development on their CV. They wanted to be able to say they were a board member, but weren't necessarily motivated to do it for the right roles. And they would often turn up for a few meetings. The minute you actually needed them to start doing things, they would disappear from the face of the earth. So there are lots of different tools at your disposal as a chair, or a vice chair indeed.
Oh, thank you. I think I have very strong opinions about paper volunteers, as I call them.
Yeah.
So sort of and we, as an organization, we have, about 6,000 volunteers. But if we dig down deeper, you have this much, much smaller core who are disproportionately more active than the rest, who are sort of, keeping a lot of it going. And you have all the way down to the other end of the spectrum. We've probably got more than we'd like, who are just, rocking up to meetings and again, just putting it on CVs and passing through. So it's about, how do we ensure that healthy balance? So moving then on to, and again, Chua created a nice springboard for this one, talking about family, talking about the community he creates with his committees, which is all very good, but it doesn't always go to plan. And I think something which you don't often see until you actually become a chair is the darker side of things that go on that you do need to address. And I'll qualify that, and Penny touched on this, and I've worked with Penny on a couple of these in the past, where you do have people on your committee, you do have people who are volunteering within your area of responsibility, and it comes back to values and behaviors, it comes back to code of conduct and such, and that you're volunteers, but you also represent the institution. And I think we have a strategy, we have a direction of travel, and we have some do's and don'ts of how to do that. And while you may disagree with some of them, there is always a line. And I think we all know where that line is. So again, as chair, I think it's very, very important, because we as staff, I don't want to come in and sort of tell members how they should or shouldn't be behaving. I think it's a lot more powerful and effective and appropriate that comes from a peer, that comes from somebody within the community. And that, of course, puts a lot of pressure on the chairs, as Penny has said. So again, it's not pleasant, but how do you go about doing that sort of effect? What advice would you give for somebody who has to deal with such a situation where somebody is not participating? Perhaps is the easy one. They're not, they haven't come to several meetings, they haven't taken on any responsibilities, or they have put their hand up and said, I can do this, but they haven't. Or complaints come through, they've spoken to somebody really, really badly, and not represented either your committee and community very well, and certainly not the institution. How do you deal with that? And I think I'll pass that one on to Penny first, because I know Penny, I think you're indirectly currently responsible for about almost 1,000 volunteers in the professional review community. So yes, no shortage of examples over the years.
Yeah. No, I mean, the not turning up is one of the issues that we're dealing with at the moment. So people who have been trained and are or say they're available to commit to carry out professional review interviews, and then are not volunteering to do that. So where there are a number of people, we can do a sort of dare I say, a standard letter that says, over this period of time, you haven't met the threshold, etc., etc. Is there a good reason? Are there things we could do to help you? So you start off with the we'd like to help you do the things that we're asking you to do. Please let us know how we can help. And if that doesn't work, then you get into something that's a little more formal, and it depends very much on the situation. So, the sort of, I would guess the worst one I've had to deal with is somebody who carried out an interview, and during that interview demonstrated inappropriate behaviours. And so, sometimes you get these reports about how interviews are conducted, and you just, bash your head against a brick wall to think, why would somebody do that? It just seems so outrageous, the behaviour. But when you have got a population of over 1,000, you can see that you're going to have a huge variety of behaviours and attitudes and so on. And so I've had to have a number of difficult conversations from time to time. Sometimes it's been pointing out to people that what they've done is unacceptable, and would they change their behaviour, or we will support them to change their behaviour. And in one or two occasions, it is not acceptable. You're not representing the institution in the right way, and I'm afraid we're going to have to stop using you in that position. And, you know, the worst case is that they would decide to resign because they're not, they don't feel they're being treated fairly. But we certainly bend over backwards to try and make sure that people are treated fairly and that everybody is treated the same and held to the same high standards of behaviour. But it certainly takes a brave pill occasionally to, you know, some of the people that I've had to have Teams conversations with have been very difficult. And there was one particular phone call which I will remember for a very long time, where the person on the other end of the phone put the phone down on me. So you can't win them all, but it's treating everybody with dignity, fairness, respect, giving them a good hearing, and trying to understand their point of view. What were they thinking that meant that behaviour seemed appropriate to them when it certainly doesn't seem appropriate to me? So, you know, trying to understand some of the background to this, and then you can decide where you go with it as to whether it's trainable, changeable, or we just have to say goodbye in some occasions.
Anything to add from?
Yeah, I think I would, from a board perspective. So, without going into too much detail, we did face something similar when I was chair of the Young Members Board, in which we had a board member on the executive who was frequently misrepresenting the Young Members Board within the institution. He was attending other meetings, misrepresenting the position, really not doing Young Members Board a favour. And I think, again, it was a quite difficult conversation to have between all of the exec. To just say, you know, you can't do this. You know, there are institution politics at play, and you have to think of the health of the board. And in that instance, the person ended up stepping down. But I think the way we handled it was to give them a convenient way to step down without embarrassing them socially. And they're still an active institution volunteer in a capacity that's much more suited to their skills, I think. But it was quite uncomfortable. And it's part and parcel. Unfortunately, I've never had to deal with it probably as much as you, Penny, but I think it's part and parcel of being a chair, is that you have to be willing to just look at what your board members are doing and potentially challenge them, even just in the board meeting as well. Some people can be inappropriate, or just something you have to monitor as a chair. It's part of the job.
I take it as the chair of the committee that I am the backstop. I am the goalkeeper or the referee, if you want to look at it that way. So if there is inappropriate behaviour during a meeting, outside a meeting, you know, even down to the volunteers who carry out our interviews for us, then the buck stops with me. It's my responsibility to deal with that. And that's part of what I take on when I put myself forward to become chair of the committee.
No, indeed. And I think, you know, the necessity, however, you know, unpleasant it might be to deal with, is the alternative is to let it slide and be seen to let it slide, which is, again, it develops its own problems. Without sort of pushing anyone to air dirty laundry, I mean, is there anything else Amit or Chu would like to add to that? Any advice that you'd have for sort of steering through, or perhaps avoiding getting to that point? I mean, are there behaviours and things that you can avoid to reach such, particularly at sort of a meeting level, to avoid such impasses?
Well, I will speak from my personal experience, because not as a chair first, the time I was still a committee member, an ordinary committee member, I was actually putting forward a few suggestions and initiatives in the committee, and then it was totally not well accepted by some of the committee members, and it was really like, please behave. I don't know what happened. The whole thing like just blown out of proportions, and then okay. So the way I handled it was, okay, I take back whatever the thing.Maybe I would. My point of view at that time was, okay, probably my suggestions was not what do you call that? Was not well prepared. I did not have something that was actually good enough to actually had the other committees to buy in. So I bring back whatever that I actually prepared during the meeting, and then I redo the whole thing, come up with supporting documents or supporting proof about my ideas, and then put it on the table again during the next 2 or 3 meetings. That's what I did to avoid the confrontation, the kind of situations. That's what I did.
Yeah, that stepping back is quite important as well. Sometimes you have to be that person.
Yeah.
Anything from your side, Amit, before we negotiate calmer waters?
So in terms of of course, touch wood, I haven't come across anyone, that's that bad, you could say, yet. But the small things I picked up on is when you're trying to, when you've just hopped on and you're trying to feed all your resources to one specific, company, for example. And then that's where it becomes, we're here to, give the whole community an equal chance. Like, yes, you carry out great events, but we have to make sure we're delivering this across the board, opposed to feeding it into, one pipeline essentially. So to stop it becoming, a favor game, just have that chat, make sure it's going to be, we can help them as well as X company. So just making sure there's that, equality and fairness between the, committee, you could say, before it gets, before it snowballs and becomes, I'll only do it if we're doing it for X, Y, Z. But that's been my personal experience. And yeah, we spread it out, and yeah, now we're, we've got a good scope across the board, and it seems like it's going well. So that's my experience.
And the perception of fairness as well. So
Yes.
you can be seen to be doing that, not things happening behind closed doors, that leave people wondering, perhaps. So so I'm just looking at the time. So we're coming up to almost 45 minutes or so, and I would want to open up to questions from the attendees. I did see, yes, somebody was typing, so we'll jump over to this one. Do any of the chairs have or take responsibility of any budgets? What kind of processes do they follow to approve expenses? Is it strictly controlled, or do we simply know what the expenses are and just pay them out? So I'm gonna put this one onto Amit, because obviously your panel will control and will have a budget.
Yes, yeah.
So I'll let you field that one. So
in terms of the budget itself, everything's run through, vice chair and chair. We approve, what expense it's going to be. We refrain from, if we've got an Eventbrite, like set up, for an event, we'll refrain from taking money and not refunding it, because that's something we can't do. And again, if an expense comes in to be, say we anticipated it'll be £100, and the venue costed us £50, we will make sure that's being tracked, and that's fed back into our reserve. So our treasurer, which looks after all of that, is very strict on that. And again, the IMechE is a charity, so we have to ensure we work as a charity. But yeah, now I'll just say everything is controlled budget. Again, even if we're going to do a social, for our panel, for the great work that they've done so far, we won't go all out and start going to 5-star restaurants or whatever. But just be smart with it, and as long as you're smart with it, the committee will just flow. And that gives us more money to invest. Recently we got drones, to go and do more events at schools. So the end goal, it's kind of a loop. The more we look after it, the more it looks after us.
Indeed. And when it comes to the actual member expenses themselves, things like travel, etc., I mean, you also follow the same rules and guidelines we have for our expense claims. So it's X amount per mile. There are exclusions as well, so you can't end up in 5-star hotels, unfortunately. Exactly. We do have some regulation around that, which is quite good. Amit, did you ever, well, Amit, on the spot, did you ever come across any conflict?
No conflicts as such. The only time I could probably remember is we've got surplus money from an event because the price came in cheaper. So our best bet was put it back into the reserve and hold that, opposed to go and spend it on, you know, equipment for schools or whatever. So, you know, follow the right process rounds. So make sure it goes back, and that's that. But in terms of conflicts, no conflicts. Our committee is quite good with that, which I'm proud of.
Yeah, I'd also add we have some pretty rigorous audits that go through HQ as well, which the treasurers have been involved in, and the chairs and vice chairs as well, across all the regions with budgets and all the sort of bank accounts and stuff that are out there. And I was an outsider to that process, and it gave me slight anxiety, just with the sheer rigor and thoroughness of, you know, trying to get hold of and making all those efforts to get, you know, visibility of all spending and such. So yes, we do that from HQ as well. To, you know, we don't just let people play with money. It's very, very important to us, especially since there's so little of it to go around. We do have to be quite careful with our budget allocations that we've got.
I think, Donovan, just to pick up on that, I think that's where the chair's relationship with the staff support is really quite important, because the staff know the policies, procedures, they know what's allowable, they don't, and they also know where there's flexibility. So again, as the chair, often you might have to say, no, I think this is good value, you know, it's expensive, but it's worth it. We're going to get some real value out of this. A good example for me would always be the Young Members Strategy Weekend, which is a big event which pulls people together for a weekend in a hotel to do a week. And if you can demonstrate the value that you're getting out of it, I think that's, but then you're reliant on the staff to actually deliver it. So you have to work in conjunction with the staff. The chair, it's not the sole discretion of the chair. So yeah, I think it's a really important relationship with the staff member.
No, indeed. And I think particularly, I mean, Penny works under the QMB auspices, their license requirements a lot more regulated and closely working with staff. But I think, you know, those like IMechE, CHUA, you know, the young member panels themselves and the area committees, etc. I'd say contact us as staff, be it, you know, volunteer support, member networks. It's, you know, those are general inboxes that are looked after by a number of people, or people that you know. I think you can always find somebody who goes, do you know a member of staff? A lot of those emails come to me. I've been around for a while, so I will get asked all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And if I can't answer you, I probably know where to send you. And we're always here to help as well. So definitely that one. So another question around funding. How does IMechE allocate budget for each region and then smaller IMechE groups? I will take that one and say the chairs, it's an interesting one. Penny's got her hand up. Actually, no, Penny, it's an interesting question. So you put your hand up. You were brave, so I will reward you for said bravery.
So as regards the PRC, the budget is set by the staff, and that is the budget and the expenses that we need to run the meetings. So currently I am limited to having 2 face-to-face meetings a year and 2 virtual meetings, because the budget has shrunk from where it was pre-COVID, but I don't get any more involvement than that. What I was going to say was that when I was chair of the automobile division, the divisions and groups were going through a restructuring, so that instead of them taking cash from the IMechE centre, they had to become self-financing. So that a lot of the divisions and groups have to run events to make money to fund their other activities. So I can see some of the other people on the discussion nodding. So that's obviously the situation they're there for. So it's actually very unusual that money gets handed out from IMechE Central to any of the divisions and groups and regions, because they are expected to earn their own keep, effectively, run their events, make their money, and then they get some say over where they spend it.
So just to kind of touch onto that, a recent example for us is, you know, we wanted drones which that, you know, Rolls-Royce had. It was drones which kids could program and control, and it's, you know, with blocks. And we thought, you know, if we had this in our committee panel, we could go out to all the schools and, you know, deliver this, because, you know, it's good value added. So of course our budget didn't stretch for all of it, so we went up to the region. We pitched the idea. We told them, you know, we're targeting X amount of people, and then they funded the rest of the purchase for the drones, and now it sits with the region, but, you know, we have access to it. And, you know, my point being, if there's a great idea and it requires a little bit more budget, you can always ask for it, and, you know, as long as it makes sense and it's sensible, it will be allowed.
Within reason.
Within reason,
yeah.
yes, yeah, of course.
So yeah, the overall budget, so the budget that the regional strategy board would get, the international strategy board would get, those are dictated and set. And of course, we have our finance board now. So again, it's allocated on what we as an organization can afford. And as Penny said, that has shrunk because of COVID, because we have fewer members, which means we have fewer subscription fees, etc. So all of these are, very real factual things, which means there's less to go around per se, but there are still those pots that get allocated, and then they've each got, so the RSB, the Regional Strategy Board, will have an allocation of funds, and they have a working group, they have a finance working group under them, where they sort of decide where that money is best spent in that respect. I don't know if you, Christian, want to add anything about education outreach spending, because that one's been quite topical this year.
Yeah, the process is kind of really varied depending on what we're trying to achieve. So we're actually just literally having a meeting tomorrow to discuss the education budget, for example. And Helen, the chair, has opened it up to the whole board to attend sort of an extraordinary short meeting just to run through her proposed budget and approve it. But some of that is very much at the staff's discretion. Things like, so the board itself might set a maximum, an X amount for education outreach toolkits, but then within that, the staff member has a great deal of discretion as to how they select the materials, divvy them up, make sure regions are getting their fair share. Other projects, such as some of our major partnerships with organisations such as Primary Engineer, or the Engineering Education Grant Scheme that we run in collaboration with IET. Those are much bigger budgets that are decided at board level, and the money is just committed to the project. So it can be really varied how budgets are assigned, and some of it's smaller amounts that need to be decided rapidly, might be a discussion between the chair and the staff member. Other bigger commitments, I think, do justify a broader board discussion, especially if there's some strategic element at play, like with the relationships with other organisations.
Perfect, thank you. So no other questions have come through. We've got a few minutes left, so I'm just going to do a very basic round the room, virtually, just closing comments. And I'd say, what would you? How would you define the chair roles, specifically? What makes it different from any other role on the committee? And what advice would you give to somebody who's, taking on that role? And I'll start with Chua, since we've not heard from you in the last few minutes. And then you can go to bed.
Well, the advice, it will be coming from my heart, would be do it with all your heart. Do it for the members. That's it. That's what I can say. Do it for the members. Not for yourself, but do it for the members. This is what drives me, drives me to continue to volunteer until today. That's the only thing. Yeah. Do it for the members.
Short, sweet, and a very good message. Thank you. Over to Christian.
I would say that the chair, to be a good chair, the way I see the chair's role is that your job is to provide some structure and some oversight and some to enforce good governance, to allow the board actually to get the most out of the board. As the chair, you're not supposed to be the dictator that makes all the decisions and the board are just there to sanity check and approve. As the chair, I almost think there's an onus to take a step back and really allow the board to make the decisions that you then provide the challenge to. So I think as a chair, that makes the board more cooperative sometimes, in my experience as well. I have seen board chairs who've been quite dominant in their positions, and I often find that they don't often get very much done.
Indeed, and that comes back to what we've been saying throughout. It's about the relationships and the trust building as well.
Yeah.
IMechE, somebody who is about, wants to take that step. What would your thoughts be?
I would say take care of your panel. First and foremost, if you can see they are happy, the people they're delivering to at events, even if I'm not at the event itself, they will be happy as well. So I'd say take care of your panel, but also identify people's strengths and weaknesses. You know, if someone, you know, is really keen on, you know, doing school events, let them go and do that. But if someone isn't, don't force them into a corner and be like, can you do this event just for the sake of it? So I would say, yeah, keep your panel happy is what I'd say.
Wise words. And then last but not least, closing comments, Penny.
I think there are three things that I would say. The first thing is anything that you volunteer at needs to be fun. So while we are doing work, you have to put some fun into it. Otherwise, people won't keep coming back for more. So for me, I really like my committee. I like the people who are on my committee, and some of them I would now class as good friends. So, you know, we get a lot done, but we get a lot done because we have a fun and friendly atmosphere to work in. And I think the other thing that we have to remember about all of this, anything you do with the IMechE, is you get out of it what you put into it. And if you're going to be one of those people who just pays your subs and gets your magazine, well, you're not going to get very much out of it. But if you throw yourself in, join a committee, get involved, you will meet lifelong friends, you will make some excellent networks, and it will broaden your horizons in terms of your personal and professional development. So I would strongly recommend anybody out there who's thinking of joining a committee to join a committee, because it's fantastic. It's the first step on a new direction, and who knows where it might lead.
Thank you very much, which is an overall very nice way to end an event in the overall volunteer conference. So thank you very, very much. And hopefully those who are watching live and those who will watch the recording have found the session useful. I've certainly enjoyed chatting to all of you. So thank you very, very much for your time, sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. I will wish you all a pleasant afternoon, and in Shua's case, a very good night. And thank you, everyone.
Lovely to meet you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Lovely
Donovan.
to
Nice
meet
to
you
see
all.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thanks, Donovan.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.